Phails at philosophy.
The Buddha separates a human being into 5 parts. So now he says, applying this kind of number 4, which was there are no wholes, there are only parts to personal identity. And that's having 5 skandhas, 5 physio-psychological constituents. That's what he said.
Yeah, and I wish he had listed them out here.
Well, he says, he doesn't.
I mean, he tells you one of them is the physical body is one,
and then the other 4 are metaphysical.
They're modes of consciousness. I'm trying to remember. They're like sensing and mental experience that's separate from sensual.
Is that getting back into the ideas around knowledge, where he talks about different type of sense perceptions?
Yeah, probably. Because I mean, the mapping of the 5 skandhas is sutric. It comes out of the early Buddhist texts. So it's a very standard structure in all Buddhist thought. And I don't know if it's sutric. At least it's in the original scriptures. It might be in the Abhidharma texts, in the analysis texts by the early monks. But it's a fundamental concept. And to me, it's interesting because it's like these early Buddhist thinkers are noticing impermanence, right? They're noticing this lack of self, this annotment, right? And they're thinking about, well,
what's the annotment again? I remember.
No self.
No self. That's right.
Yeah. And they're thinking, okay, well, but then we have these objects. So what are these objects? What constitutes those objects as something I experience as a thing? And so they do this careful analysis. Well, it's got to have stuff, right? It's got that extension in space, that physicality. What a substance ontology would say is the basic nature of things, right? But there's also ways in which the mind is working to experience it and organize it into concepts. And so it maps out and tries to say, well, these are the 5 different ways that happens. And these kinds of grouping togethers of experience make things. But the thing isn't there except as this grouping of
the parts,
this mode of experience. Yeah.
Which is where we're going to take that into those 4 parts that aren't substance.
Right.
We're going to take this into personal identity, like the thought or self, because humans are now parts, and some of those parts aren't physical.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. I mean, I think part of it is we seem to be able to fall back on ourselves. That seems to be I think we're trying to be like, well, what are things? Or like, well, I seem to be a thing. And what makes me a thing? And what am I made up of?
Right. As we've taken a turn, one of like, skin, bone, cells, all that. Right. We're going the other direction of like, what's going on in consciousness or thought or beingness.
Right. And I don't think we need to get into the details of those 4 skandhas here, partly because he doesn't give them.
Yeah, we won't go into them.
It's basically, instead of a pure mind-body dualism,
we're just talking about the mind.
The mind is like these 4 different skandhas, and the body is one of them. It's one of them. But I think the key to think of is that in like Cartesian dualism, when he notices that, he says, well, the body is one thing and the mind is another, and they have these different notions of substances. With the skandhas, they're more like modes. They're modes that reality has come into being through for a moment because of this emphasis on impermanence. Nothing is ever going to stay arranged in the way that it is. And like you said, I'm slightly different from moment to moment.